Is there a food or a beverage that you used to get all the time at the grocery store, but that has since been discontinued, and you'd be stoked to see it show up again? Well, that sort of happened to me recently, and the internet doesn't seem to know or care. But I care, and I have a YouTube channel. So let's dive in.
That gum you like is going to come back in style.
Welcome to Think Thing, a YouTube channel featuring video essays about whatever it is that I'm spending way too much time telling my wife about. Like, would you just go make a video essay about this and stop bugging me about it? Like and subscribe so my wife can go back to watching horror movie reaction videos.
Start with our golden macaroni made from special durum wheat. Boil for 7 minutes. Drain and add the flavor of sharp aged cheddar.
No matter how old you are, if you grew up in the United States or Canada and you didn't have hippies for parents, chances are close to 100% that you ate a whole lot of Kraft Mac-n-Cheese, or Kraft dinners as the Canadians know it.
It's been a long day, and only Kraft dinner can calm my nerves.
The iconic blue box was and remains a ubiquitous staple in North American pantries. It's cheap, quick and easy to make, and even the pickiest of kid eaters will thank you for serving it to them.
If your parents don't buy it, stop loving them.
No.
These days, of course, there are dozens of competing brands of boxed mac and cheese adorning the shelves of the prepared foods aisle in the grocery store, but for decades, Kraft has dominated the boxed mac and cheese market, and in so doing, become as much a part of American culture as Coca-Cola or Budweiser. Millennials may remember a time when Annie's was the only non-generic competitor to Kraft's box mac and cheese dominance. But did you know that in the 1970s and 80s, there was another blue box of mac and cheese sitting right next to the Kraft boxes on the shelf?
From San Francisco, famous for good eating, comes
Rice-a-Roni, the San Francisco treat.
The Golden Grain Pasta Company is best known for being the creators of Rice-a-Roni, the San Francisco treat. According to Wikipedia, Rice-a-Roni was introduced in 1958 in the northwestern United States and then went nationwide 3 years later. In the early 1970s, Golden Grain introduced a boxed mac and cheese.
Now from Golden Grain, the people who know pasta best. Here's new stir and serve macaroni and cheese.
By the mid-70s, presumably in order to better compete with Kraft's mac and cheese, the name had changed to Golden Grain Macaroni and Cheddar, and the box had become blue.
Which macaroni dinner has the creamiest cheese?
Golden Grain Macaroni and Cheddar.
Which has the larger macaroni, if you please?
Golden Grain Macaroni and Cheddar.
In my latchkey household, boxed mac and cheese was at least a once-a-week thing, and my brother and I agreed that Golden Grain and Kraft each had their respective charms and were distinct from each other.
The Golden Grain, I think I probably liked a little bit better. Well, the Kraft had the smaller noodles. It was like you could make a box of Kraft mac and cheese in 5 minutes, but it took 8 with the Golden Grain.
Golden Grain called for an entire half stick of butter in the cooking instructions, but otherwise, the preparation procedures were identical between it and Kraft. The cooking instructions were so similar, in fact, that you could easily whip up a double portion by cooking a box of each brand together in the same pot. Kraft had those iconic, skinny, slightly bent tubes, while Golden Grain had a more traditional elbow-shaped pasta. Golden Grain was tangier, too. It wasn't better than Kraft, but it was distinct in ways that made me go back and forth on which brand I preferred to eat on a given night. And Golden Grain's ubiquity on store shelves wasn't just a regional thing. My family moved all over the U.S. in the 1970s and early 80s, and Golden Grain was just as prevalent as Kraft everywhere we moved. Eventually, however, sometime in the mid to late 80s, I stopped being able to find Golden Grain in stores where I lived. I've read that you could still find it in certain regions until the early 2000s, but after that it was gone, seemingly forever. The Golden Grain Pasta Company changed hands a few times, and the Rice-a-Roni brand eventually got sold off to PepsiCo. Over the years, I've kept my eyes open, scanning the prepared foods aisle in stores, particularly stores in distant cities that I traveled to, hoping to catch a glimpse of my old beloved mac and cheese brand. But despite Rice-a-Roni still being a constant presence, its mac and cheese cousin was nowhere to be found for many decades.
You know, we all eat, we all have memories of food, and there's so many foods that, for a lot of us, live on in our memories.
John Finn knows a thing or two about discontinued foods.
I started the Discontinued Foods account about 2 years ago and some change as a way to just kind of share my interest in food history and nostalgia.
He's too young to have any personal experience with Golden Grain Macaroni and Cheddar, but he certainly knows what it's like to have fond memories of foods that are no longer available.
There was a Dorito from around 2009 called the Late Night Tacos. They tasted, this is the magic of food science, exactly like a hard shell beef taco, right down to this kind of trace taste of lettuce, like shredded iceberg lettuce. And last summer, they came back and they weren't selling them anywhere around me. It was exclusive. I forget what supermarket it was. I think somewhere in the Midwest. And one of my followers actually mailed me a bag. And biting into that chip, all those, again, those memories of 2009 came flooding back.
One day, a few weeks ago, I stopped by a grocery store here in my town that I don't frequent as often, and my eye caught a glimpse of a new mac and cheese brand. That's not all that odd. The proliferation of boxed mac and cheese varieties in recent years has exploded, with companies like Cracker Barrel, Cabot, and even Cheetos getting in on the action. This one made me pause, though. The label was on the silhouette of a trolley car, and the name looked just like Rice-a-Roni, except this was called Macaroni. It was a new boxed mac and cheese from the Rice-a-Roni people. It even said the San Francisco treat on the front. I looked closer. The cooking instructions were familiar, just like Kraft's, except it called for a half stick of butter. Then, in fine print on the spine of the box, I saw the words that made my latchkey kid's heart soar. Distributed by the Golden Grain Company, Chicago, Illinois. Could it be? Had they reintroduced Golden Grain Macaroni and Cheddar under a new name? I did a quick search to see if there had been a press release or anything. Sure enough, there were some trade publications talking about Rice-a-Roni coming out with a new mac and cheese product. But nobody was saying anything about a connection to Golden Grain Macaroni and Cheddar. Was this a re-release or a completely new thing? The only way to know was to buy some and try it. There appear to be 4 varieties of macaroni available. Creamy cheddar and creamy white cheddar are sold in 5.9-ounce boxes, and the newer simply imprinted 3 cheese and white cheddar versions come in larger 8.2-ounce boxes. For comparison, a box of standard Kraft Mac-n-Cheese weighs in at 7.25 ounces. I started with the creamy cheddar variety as it seemed to be the closest thing to a standard flavor. As the noodles cooked, I wondered about human memory and flavor. I was so amped up by the prospect of reliving a childhood memory, it was entirely possible that even if it didn't taste the same at all, my brain would fill in the gaps and fool me into thinking it was what I remembered. The worst outcome, I supposed, as I watched the 8-minute cook timer count down to 0, was if I couldn't tell one way or the other. Even if this new offering was an exact replica of the product I remembered, would I even know it for sure? It had been 30 years since I'd had any Golden Grain Macaroni and Cheddar. I thought I remembered the taste, but how could I ever know for sure without having the original to compare it to?
Don't forget your hat.
Well, which one is mine?
They're all your hats, Mr. Ng.
Finally, the timer rang. I drained the noodles and prepared the mac and cheese according to the directions. These days, I always zhuzh up any boxed mac and cheese in various ways, like adding a good sharp cheddar, emulsifying with starchy pasta water, etc. Everyone has their own tricks for this. But for this first test, I wanted to set a baseline, so I stuck strictly to the box instructions. I had a bite and holy shit. Any fear I had of uncertainty disappeared in a flash. There was a certain flavor note, a tang is the only way I can describe it in words, that I had not experienced in 30 years, but that was entirely familiar. I wasn't prepared for such a strong sense memory to hit me, but it was intense. It was also short-lived. A few bites in, and the intensity of the old familiar feeling had faded, and I was just eating a boxed mac and cheese. Again, it's been 30 years, and human memory is notoriously unreliable. But I firmly believe this is a reintroduction of the same old product with a few minor variations. It's not exactly the same. The color is paler and less nuclear orange than Golden Grain Macaroni and Cheddar was, due no doubt to using turmeric and paprika for color instead of whatever yellow food dyes the old stuff relied on. And there's an odd flavor note that's new, and I'm not sure I love it. For whatever it's worth, the simply imprinted 3-cheese flavor gets the closest to the old Golden Grain Macaroni and Cheddar experience for me. That one rings my childhood sense memory bell the hardest every time I try it. I think the Rice-a-Roni company might be missing an opportunity here to market this product to nostalgic Gen Xers as a reintroduction of the old blue box. if that's what this really is. I mean, I'm almost 100% certain this product is at least based on a recipe for golden grain macaroni and cheddar, or shares enough manufacturing similarity with that old product to ping some pretty deep memory centers in my brain. But sadly, I may never know for sure.
There may be just dead ends until there aren't. And sometimes it's about just putting it out there, and who knows, someone may see your video and say, oh, I can help you. I've got an answer for you.
Thanks for watching. Do you have any long-lost grocery store memories that you'd like to see come back? Tell me in the comments. And if you know anyone who might have some official info about the fate of golden grain macaroni and cheddar, please reach out and let me know. I'm so curious about it.